Friday afternoon, Gold and Black Live. Matt Stevens, Brian Neubert joined me, and a big show today with Tom Moreland will join us in segment 2, Associate Athletic Director in charge of strategic initiatives at Purdue Athletics. And, of course, Tyler Trent will join us at 2:40. Will join me over the phone, and we'll have a lot to talk to Tyler about as well. All right, Purdue, Iowa tomorrow, guys, and it is a critical game for both teams. And certainly, Matt, I'll start with you. The Boilermakers need to right the ship after a difficult loss last week, and need to get back on the winning track if bowl or whatever goals you have in front of you, you need to start with tomorrow, one would think.
Yeah, first of all, I think there's a narrative out there right now that a physical defense can handle Jeff Brom's scheme and these current Purdue players. And I think that they would like to change that narrative in a big way on Saturday. And they have their chance, because Iowa's a physical defense. They're going to come at you and hit you in the mouth. They play similar kind of style as Michigan State. They put their corners out on an island. Both of them are freshmen, by the way. And they're tinkering with this hybrid linebacker position that they've moved a safety into for the purposes of Rondell Moore. There's no other reason to do that than how special of a player he is. So there's a lot of similarities I think that they can draw from the mistakes they made, and I would just say the slow start they got off to against Michigan State. And if they don't do that on Saturday, I think they've got a decent shot of coming out with a win.
Yeah, and Brian, Kirk Ferentz and Iowa have been difficult over the years, but this is also a team in Purdue that the Rondell Moore factor and the glow of that 4-week streak got ended. How do you respond if you're Purdue? I mean, what's the important things that you are looking for tomorrow?
They have to show they can score on a defense like this. This is not new. You know. Purdue has always struggled with physical, traditional Big Ten styles of defense. That's why they've been successful when they've run an unconventional offense or a creative offense that evens the playing field a little bit, because it's really difficult at a program of Purdue's historic level to recruit the same caliber of physical presence of athlete that the Michigans, the Ohio States, in some cases the Iowas and Michigan States generally either recruit or develop. And the Michigan State game was a big fat punch in the face. And Michigan State does that to a lot of people. That wasn't Purdue. That wasn't Purdue hungover from the week before. That was what Michigan does or Michigan State does to everyone. That's what Iowa tries to do to everyone. I thought the Boston College game earlier in the year was maybe a sign of growth in that area, because I thought Boston College maybe not as good as some of these defenses, but they play that sort of way with that sort of personnel. Purdue obviously handled it on that day. They did not handle it very well against Michigan State. This is Iowa, the more the same. The reason they've been such a problem for Purdue over the years is the reason they're a problem for everybody. That they're fundamentally sound, they're physical, they do not beat themselves, and they're just somebody you have to physically beat to win against. You know, I mentioned last week, when Joe Tiller came to Purdue, they won early on with creative offense. And then after that, they got to a point personnel-wise where they could win with defensive ends and offensive tackles. And there was a game against Iowa one year. I can't remember what year it was exactly.
2003, I think.
The first thing Tiller mentioned in his post-game press conference was our offensive tackles beat their defensive ends, and that's why we won the game.
Yeah.
That's what some of these games sometimes come down to. When you look at last year's game against Iowa, yes, Purdue won. Purdue on paper handled them. But I thought Brom put it well when he said we basically made 3 plays. We made the 3 big plays we had to make. Everything else between that was a struggle, and it's going to be a struggle again tomorrow. Purdue's got to find a way to make big plays, because the whole piecing together drives is really difficult against defenses like this.
Only 294 yards in total offense last year in that 24-15 win, and that also is a big factor of, I thought it was interesting that Jeff Brom was very open about, well, we executed when we had to, we picked on the right guy, we made the big plays, but let's not kid ourselves. We had problems, we being Purdue, had problems. They trailed, 9-7 at the half anyway, and then, of course, broke the game open with Anthony Mahungu and Elijah Sindelar show. So that will be an interesting storyline. I want to thank our sponsors, Triple X, on the hill but on the level, a Purdue tradition since 1929. Greg and Carrie Ayersman, great friends of the show, and we appreciate them. And John Basham and the folks at Basham Rentals, already working on 2019-20. That's hard to believe in the world of student housing, but we appreciate John. Saw him at the Purdue men's game last night. He is hard to miss in those gold seats at Mackey Arena. And, of course, Hilton Garden Inn, when tomorrow's a big day, State, HDI tonight. They'll be full, I would guess, this weekend. But if you're looking for room reservations for Purdue basketball upcoming, certainly check them out. And State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. Trent also has been a big friend of the show, and will be working a high school game, I'm certain, tonight in the high school playoffs. All right, Matt, you look at Iowa and you look at what they bring to the table. It's the old injury thing. It's the time of year when you get to talk more and more about injuries, typically, just because of where you are. But both teams have, that we know of, Rondale Moore, Nathan Stanley, two guys that may or may not play, and they might play just like normal. We don't know, but any advantage there, or what do you see the difference between two of the obviously the key guys for both teams?
Well, I think they're both going to play. I think Nate Stanley's thumb, it could be broken, and I think they're going to play him. They have it's a complete unknown what they have behind Nate Stanley at quarterback.
Which should worry Purdue.
It really should.
Week.
Yeah, I mean, Rocky Lombardi throws for over 300. You might as well, if you're a Purdue fan, you might want to, see Nate Stanley instead of the backup. I get that.
Yeah.
No, I get that. But I do think that there's an element of, whether it's been the thumb or whether it's been other elements of defenses just being able to put him in an uncomfortable scenario, he's completed less than 50% of his passes over his last two games. And he has not been very, very good, both against Maryland and Penn State. Jeff Brom has said it from the moment this week started. We have to get him to be uncomfortable. Well, if that injury is what it is, he's already uncomfortable, and now that means you got to get him on the move, and you got to get him throwing and from angles that he doesn't want to do. So I think that'll be an issue for Rondale Moore. I think Purdue fans who were watching on television saw him kind of limp off the field late in the Michigan State game. Mm-hmm. He's been nursing that lower body injury all week long in practice. I feel like Rondale's going to play. I just don't know how effective he's going to be. And when you're that dynamic of an athlete, there is a distinguishable difference between 100% healthy Rondale and a non-100% healthy Rondale. And so what you can get out of that young man is critical for Purdue, because they need big plays. And Iowa's defense prides themselves on not letting anybody get over the top of them and getting big plays. It is the, immovable, it is the convergence of two completely different styles. How Iowa wants to play defense, how Purdue wants to play offense. And something's got to give on Saturday. In order for it to give toward Purdue, I think Rondale Moore's got to make some plays, and he's got to be healthy enough to do it.
Yeah, you look at that, Brian, and have it's been a storyline, too, that other guys have got to step up. Rondale Moore, do you think, and this is almost an impossible question, but I'll ask it anyway, just in terms of, has Purdue relied too much on him? Do you sense of any, just by watching body language, and, I look at Jared Sparks, others that we thought might step up more than they have to date. There's reasons for that, but how do you view that Rondale Moore effect, and could that be a possible advantage in its own way, that if he's not as capable, that somebody else has to get the job done?
Well, I think in terms of Rondale Moore and everybody else, I don't know if you can separate the two things, because a lot of the big plays Purdue has made by someone other than Rondale Moore played some sort of role in. Because of the attention he commands. Now, if Iowa sees reason to believe that they don't have to pay the same attention to him tomorrow that they would otherwise, perhaps things kind of spread out and change for everybody, and that makes things even more difficult for Purdue. But I think it's critical. Obviously, they have him out there just to sort of command the respect that he always commands, just because of what it means to Purdue's overall mix, because he's really what Isaac Haas was to the basketball team's offense last year. He is that first guy you have to worry about and that everybody else kind of plays off of. That's the first and last time Rondale Moore and Isaac Haas will ever be compared to one another, as it should be. But I just don't know how you can separate the two. In terms of Jared Sparks, I think we all thought he was going to have a much bigger year than he has thus far. I think he's in a part of the field that's just kind of the Bermuda Triangle for Purdue offensively. I just don't think they can get it out there very much. He's had some opportunities. Some bad things have happened. Obviously, the Missouri touchdown being what it is. There was one, too, where he caught it, would have been a touchdown, came out just out of bounds.
Yeah, against
Made a good
Northwestern.
receiver play on it. It just barely missed. It just hasn't clicked. I just don't think that's Purdue's bread and butter, getting it out to that spot. Doesn't mean it won't be in the future, doesn't mean it can't be on any given week, it just hasn't been yet.
Yeah.
To dovetail off
Yeah.
that point quickly out, I do think Jeff Brom's putting an APB out on Jared Sparks, because I think since about week 2, there have been teams that have taken that quick out away,
Yeah.
and there hasn't been an adjustment been made. And you're talking about a former quarterback that knows routes and knows what those can mean to an offense. An adjustment's got to be made. Now, we're talking about a very young player still. We're talking
Yeah,
about a
he's only a
sophomore.
sophomore.
We're talking about a guy, or a player that can still learn how to make those adjustments and make himself be effective. But teams are taking that flag route away. And I think that there needs to be an adjustment on how to get 12 the football, because Isaac Zico, when
Who's
Purdue
been
was
great.
rolling, was great and has been great. You need that outside. You need that outside because, it is so compacted in there with Rondell Moore, and I would say now with Bryson Hopkins, that you cannot have so many people in such a small space for David Blau to be trying to complete passes. And I think that's a major issue going forward for Purdue, but I think it's very, very solvable because I think they have a lot of talent on the outside, and I just think they need to just make a few adjustments on how they get them the football, and if they can, it'll start to, again, look like what you saw against Northwestern and Missouri, and I think that can happen on Saturday.
Yeah. Bryson Hopkins obviously has picked it up and has become a true threat as well, and the tight ends seem to be fully engaged in this offense. All right, Brian, when you look back now, this will be the second sellout of this season, and I know we will say what the obvious that, it's hard to believe based on a couple of years ago that this program would already have had now its third sellout under Jeff Brom, but just a matter of level of interest and the surprise and what that means in recruiting and why now Purdue is in fact relevant in November and how much that matters.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, the answer is the question.
Yeah.
All of those things have made Purdue interesting. Purdue has had some success, which there was probably not a college program in the country that experienced less for the 3 years prior.
Yes, that is true.
And thus was probably more thirsty for success than this one. So the success is part of it. Playing interesting football is part of it too. Even when you're losing, you're more often than not interesting. I think Purdue's obviously gotten a lot of publicity nationally. That matters for all sorts of different reasons. The Ohio State win was huge. All the Brom speculation afterwards at least keeps people on Purdue's mind. I think this is just a product now that people want to watch, and it wasn't before, it is now. And to the recruiting portion of that question, obviously it's huge because environment really matters. Kids want to go to places they know they're going to more often than not play in front of a relatively full stadium, if not a full stadium, and Purdue has just been night and day in that portion of its program from before Brom to now, and that really matters in recruiting.
Yeah, and they are, like I said, the second sellout in what should be also a great day at Ross-Ade Stadium weather-wise, which has not necessarily been the case for their first sellout against Ohio State. The environment couldn't be been a whole lot better. All right, let's say I want to, Brian, before we let you go, but first, Matt, one last thing on just so if Purdue is going to win tomorrow, this is what has to happen. Simple as that. If you're going to drop one thing, what
I
is that?
really think it could be a scenario in which quarterback gets off the deck and just rebounds from what they've both called poor performances. David Blau, can he get off the deck and prove that was an anomaly instead of are we back to the turnover-prone David Blau? Yeah. If he can do that, Purdue's got a really good shot. From the other side, we've talked about Nathan Stanley and what he can mean to the Iowa offense. I also think there's a scenario in which if you're a Purdue fan, if Iowa's running the ball on first and second down, that's a major red flag, and that's going to be a major, problem for the Boilermakers. But if
they're not stopping them, then,
right? But if Nathan Stanley, if they are, and Nathan Stanley's in a 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, that's exactly where Nick Holt wants to live with his aggressive style of blitzes with Jacob Thieneman, Marcus Bailey, and Derek Barnes, and I think that Purdue can really, really salvage a pass rush on 3rd down if they're in that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, I want to ask you a basketball question from last night. Obviously, the Purdue men dealt with Berrien, a 19-point win, if my memory's right. And just some overall impressions. A lot of stuff on the site already about that, but in a minute or so. What did you see last night, and what do you see going ahead?
It's hard to know anything because everything's different. Personnel's different, personalities are different, offensive styles can be different, defensive styles can be different. What you can take from an exhibition game, what you can take from the totality of the West Virginia exhibition, what we know about it at least, and the Marion exhibition, I'm not really sure. I don't think you're going to see many games where Carson Edwards misses all 6 of his threes, where he shoots as low volume as he did yesterday. But we don't know because his role is entirely different too. Even the known commodities about this team are unknowns to a certain extent because their roles are so much different. Matt Harms, Nogel Eastern, moving into such a prominent role. I think what you saw last night in Matt Harms was a player who's ready to be pretty good right now. He was pretty good right away, but I think he's ready to be a much better player even now in an expanded role than he was last year. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Ryan Klein prior to the season. Everybody thinks he's going to have a good year. I think good might be understating it right now. The way he played from what we know about West Virginia, the way he played last night, the way he's shooting the ball. It'll come down to a question of has he gotten this much better, or is this the player that's been kind of playing a smaller role on really good teams before, and now it's just opportunity instead of improvement. I think those are some of the things that have kind of come to light about Purdue thus far, but I think all the meaningful stuff we're going to find out about them is weeks down the road, because when they get into bigger games, when they get into adverse situations, that's when we're going to find out kind of what they're all about. Everything is completely brand new.
Yeah, and that is going to be a storyline. I think a story of a season here is how the Boilermakers handle all of that. It was good, fun basketball, interesting basketball to watch. I wouldn't say it was always good last night, but I think that's going to be an interesting storyline as we watch. The Purdue will play next week. Fairfield on the 6th, and Ball State. That game has been set for 8 p.m. on next Saturday against the Cardinals, in both of those games, obviously in Mackey Arena. All right, we'll take a couple-minute break and bring in Tom Moreland and talk about a little bit about Purdue athletics, Purdue marketing, some of the initiatives that you're seeing, and the behind-the-scenes look at that. And we'll look forward to doing that in a couple of minutes on Gold and Black Live.